when I say that I was born and raised in Idaho, they think, "Oh, what is it like growing up in the middle of cornfields?" I'm like, nope, think farther west. We're west. Think potatoes, and that I'm from the potato state. But it's a really good question actually, because my father is the one that ventured into the states. I mean, he married my mother at a very young age in Mexico, and my mom. I mean, really, when I'm telling the story, I'm just echoing or replaying what my mom has told me or what my parents have told me. That there was nothing for them to do. There was no work, and there was no work for them to be able to have like some sort of stability financially. And so my dad, along with everyone else back in the 70s, um, went on the dangerous trek to come into the US in search of the American dream. Um, he was undocumented at the time, and but that was it. He was with a group of the um, undocumented immigrants, and they ended up in Idaho. So it's not an easy state to get to, for one. But that's where the group that he was with ended up. And he tells me he was walking on a gravel road, and like you can, and there's just a bunch of farms. I wish it was farms and farms and farmland. That's all you can see really when you're far up north of Rupert. And my dad says that our then who's going to be our boss, he drove up to my dad and in his broken Spanish, and my dad didn't speak English. He goes, "Hey, amigo, tu need trabajo?" And my dad's like, "See, yeah, absolutely. Like, I will work for you." And my dad learned how to repair machinery. He picked rock. He drove tractors. He did. I mean, eventually, he was like as the like the learning of skills, he was acquiring all these skills, and then later he became the person to harvest the crops and plant the seeds for sugar beets and potatoes and wheat. And eventually, I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version, my mom joined him as well in Idaho, and she also did undocumented. And it wasn't until the Reagan amnesty, from the Reagan administration, when they took advantage of that and they became naturalized citizens, and it's that they've been taking us to Mexico. And I've been really, when I tell people that I had the fortune of living a binational life of growing up in Idaho, but I also had spent my fair share in Mexico of like washing clothes out by the river, and fetching water from the water well because there was no running water, and we would carry the jar clays or the clay jars on our backs and have to walk back home with mom. And it was quite different. Every time we would come back to the States and we had a black and white TV with one working channel, but still there were those things like that that really made me appreciate, or just I guess be more aware of like the differences of the worlds that I was living in. But back in those days, to answer your question, they were very slim. There weren't a lot of Latinos in southern Idaho. And I remember when I was in kindergarten, I learned to speak English from watching Sesame Street. And my older brother had been enrolled in the school system, so when he would come home from school, when I was because I was he's 6 years older than me, so he would come home practicing his English, and I would practice with him from what I heard on Sesame Street. And by the time I got into kindergarten, the families that were also kind of following my parents' footsteps and coming and in search of that American dream, they would come with their entire families. And I'm going to name drop them really quick because I will not forget it. Becky and Ricardo Madrigal, who are one of my good buddies still, they didn't speak any English. And I remember my kindergarten teacher asking me at the time, like, "Will you translate?" And I was a translator at at 5, 6 years old to my friends. Este es azul, this is blue, things like that. Um, but later, as the years progressed, and after the Reagan administration, there was a lot more people from Michoacan specifically, where we were, or where our home is, started to venture into Idaho because they again there was just no financial there's no financial stability in Mexico, as well, at least where we were, because it's a tiny, tiny village. There were houses made out of adobe. just like very poor, very humble, very simple lives. And but for trying not to don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Just to think of my parents and the sacrifice of that, how much time they spent away from each other, and my dad working, picking, doing things like picking rock, and sending whatever he could back to my mom. It's it's something that I don't take for granted, and it's definitely something that has shaped me into something that I won't forget. So they are my roots. They are, even though I'm an opera singer, something very unnatural or just unorthodox for people that come from a little village in Mexico and Little Rupert, Idaho. It's something that is not seen. It's not common, and so. But for me, those early memories, those experiences, those shaped me to being the person that I am today.